received his education from God, the Black church, and his mama's daddy, Mr. J.C. Crane, who talked with God during 92 years on this earth. Also, his daddy's mama, Miss Juanita Gamble, who taught him the difference between just singing and singing from the heart. Definitely his parents, Art and Carrie Gamble, who retired from teaching after 30 years of service, each in North San Diego County. Every day, his wife, the former Miss Kia J. Thornton, and his 2 daughters educate him on the meaning of life. Dr. Gamble is an active member of the Association of Black Psychologists as a secretary for the Southern California Association of Black Psychologists. In 2007, the California Association of School Psychologists nominated him to be the National School Psychologist of the Year. He is the 2011 and 2012 President-elect for the California Association of School Psychologists. Currently, he is an assistant professor in the School of Psychology at California State University, Long Beach. His research agenda focuses on African educational and philosophical, thank you, philosophical solutions to promote equity for all students in special education, social capital of program leaders, access of students to high-quality instruction and student support services, as well as the empowerment and uplift of the oppressed in education. Brandon enjoys spending time with his family, practicing martial arts, surfing, and playing the guitar. His favorite quote is, "We have to have an undying love for the people," as stated by Kwame Ture, aka Stokely Carmichael. Can we all welcome Dr. Brandon Gamble, please?
It's us, just us. Let's connect. Let's connect here. I'm going to be in between here and there. Hopefully, I can catch most of this on the computer, but I really want to be able to have a dialogue with you. So I'm going to talk for just a little while. Sister Lauren, how much time I got?
You got about an hour and a half.
Okay, all right. So I'll probably talk for about a half hour with some ideas, but I really want to answer your questions because this is a conversation that keeps being had, but we kind of run over the same things again and again. So I'd like to open it up to more conversation. But let me pose a few ideas first. Even before I get into all that, I got to thank the Creator for this opportunity to be able to speak, to have breath, for waking me up this morning. I want to thank Black Jesus, or Osiris, or whoever it needs to be. My daddy above, my mama above as well. Truth, justice, righteousness, balance, propriety, harmony, order. And that would be my eye. I got to thank my ancestors as well. On my mama's side, the Gardners, the Wilkins, the Mitchells, the Cranes. And my daddy's side, the Hayes, the Mathises, the Glovers, and of course the Gambles. Again, I'm not going to try to tell you about Black manhood, which was supposed to be part of my topic, or even preach, but kind of speak to what could be. And hopefully we can wrestle with this thing together, because that's part of the whole manhood piece, is being able to wrestle with something. Going back to this idea of my eye. Men really can't be men without women, so I want to keep balancing that out. Because sometimes folks just have the conversation on the side. I want to keep that connection as well. So my eye, there's truth, justice, righteousness, balance, propriety, harmony, order. These are different principles coming from way back. Anybody know where these principles come from? Go ahead, huh? Egypt, yes. Which is, I've heard somebody said it's located in some. Yeah, what's your name?
Sorry.
There's just, certain types of coincidences that go down. I wasn't even quite sure I was even going to put my eye into the conversation today, but here you is. So, all right. That was good. That was good. All right. I don't know if anyone caught that. But the significance of spirit along with you. You've got to have it with you if you are going to be truly whole and human. Let me just pause right there in spirit, because I'm catching on some of y'all miss the whole piece because you don't get to talk like this in public school settings sometimes. There are African ways of being that I think the world misses out on. James Baldwin said that white people suffered so much more from racism than black folk, really because they lost a large part of their humanity. And the part of their humanity is that sense of spirit that lasts beyond where you're at. Let me even break it down a little more. The Egyptians, or better known as those from Kemet, the word itself, or the Nomo, or the Medinator, was powerful in and of itself. Just the fact that you could write, you can project yourself into the future, and that was seen as being next to God. Okay. Everybody follow me about this spirit thing? Okay. There's this crazy building over here, all the way up almost by 7th Street. Anyone seen this? They got these things in there with pages and pages, and they press them together. You with me now?
I'm with you.
You with me? But they said at some point that at least Africans in America and other parts, you better not be able to read. Why? Because you have no soul. You have no soul because if we can keep you from reading, then you have no soul. If you can keep you from writing, then you can't project yourself forward. That's just one avenue. They didn't know that we was that deep connected. Everybody follow me now about spirit? Because if not, then we just really couldn't go forward in talking about what a man is, or manhood, or what a human being is. All right? Let me define a couple other things about manhood. I have a thesis student who's here on campus. I'm on her committee. And Dr. Mandy's working with her as well. Her name is Patrice Collins. She's doing some really good work with black fatherhood. And one of the challenges that we've all run into is helping her really define black fatherhood. People have expectations about what a father is, what a man is, but that next connection of fatherhood, because some people can be a father but not actually engage in fatherhood. Some people can be a man but not actually engage in manhood. Did y'all catch that piece? Yeah. Okay, because there's children who are born and they don't get a chance to have a childhood, or it goes way too fast. I don't know if you've seen any of these children. They hard as can be at 3 years old. What you want? This is mine. I don't know if you've seen these little folks. Okay? But they didn't get a chance to have a childhood. Now, this relates, and there's a good friend of mine, Dr. Michael Dumas. He was here for about 4 years now. He's over at NYU. But he talks quite a bit about black boyhood and how it gets pushed very quickly. Very quickly. So sure, little black boys, real cute. Kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade, but everybody seems to be up in arms when they get 10 years old and they're a little bigger. Now they're threatening. And now this boyhood needs to be chopped off. If you were to do a Google search of black boys, or black boyhood, you wouldn't find too much. Or usually there might be stuff about jail and crime and suspension rates from schools. Everybody follow me on this? Pushing along a black boyhood. So there isn't that time, especially here in America, that time to develop manhood. And there's some things that are out of order. So the real strong principle I'm trying to hold on to with my yacht is order. How do you get to that point where you have that manhood? Or where you have that opportunity? Going back to, and I heard you over there, Tahaka. I know you got the whole pyramids and Egypt and the whole thing down. I heard you over there. All right. But I want you to, if you can follow along with me as well, this idea of adding on this term hood, because English is funny. You know, we just throw stuff together and make it a word and people just glom onto it. But have you ever stopped to pause at what it meant when somebody puts on a hood? Just even in our society, if you all have been to graduation, everybody's got a hood on. And you can tell the different hoods. If you got a doctoral hood, it's bigger than everybody else's. It's kind of heavy. Okay. If you got a master's hood, and you got little sleeves in there, okay. There's even significance of the sleeves. You're supposed to be able to carry wine, so you can give that to your doctor. Okay. to keep him happy. Because there's a whole system of hoodness. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I throw that on the university system?
You're good.
Well, let me mix that up a little bit. Well, if we take that down to childhood, okay, and little boys getting pushed along through boyhood in elementary school, middle school, they don't really have an opportunity to really put it on. They want that hood off and want you back in the hood where we can see you and keep an eye on you. Or we'll put you in some other place. There's no falling through the cracks for black boys. There's no falling through the cracks because somebody will come and work to make money off of it at any capacity. If you're going to jail, we're going to make money off of you. If you go to college, we'll make money off of you, and we'll keep raising the tuition. I don't know if y'all have followed the news as of even this week. Wait, and watch how the tuition gets raised. Just a little indentured servitude thrown on a hood with a little extra lockdown on it. So CSUs now and other public schools all throughout the country, the tuition keeps rising and folk have to go ahead and put on more and more debt. You can't even come to a place like Cal State Long Beach, Cal State Northridge, Cal State Dominguez Hills, Cal State Fullerton, Cal State Bakersfield without having to incur some level of debt, the majority of students who come through. You follow me? So when a man is matriculating through a place like this, they might have to think, man, I gotta go work for somebody else in order to get out from under this so I could have my own hood. I'm not locked down in this. Y'all follow me? Yeah. On some of these pieces? All right, all right. So I wanted to define a few of those terms, then get into these 4 concepts, and then we'll break it into more discussion. The first one is peace, and I'll tell you the 4 here. Peace, protection, provisions, and power. I'm gonna give a few examples to go along with each one of these. But this order that was really taken from us, I'd rather talk about what we have had and what we can possibly be, because I can go on and on about how disruptive this particular educational system is to the actual process of manhood. And I'm not even just talking about public schools, private schools, or even if you sat at home and took an online course, the information that's coming at you that's telling you about black folk. There's been some studies that said that, coming from the Journal of Black Psychology, that black students who have watched television, even if they're getting A's and B's, they still get from the television the impression that black students aren't able to do very well in school. Just from the television. Now, these are students who are getting A's and B's. That's who was surveyed. So there's a problem there in regards to what's being projected upon folks. So peace. Martin Luther King. How many know when Martin Luther King went to college? How old was he? 16. 2 years prior, he was kind of confused and worried. Didn't have a lot of peace. You know what his daddy did? His name actually wasn't Martin. He was Michael. He was born Michael King. So was his father. But his father had become a preacher, and he decided during his adolescence to change his name to Martin. So when people said it, they had to say Martin Luther, like the Christian reformer. So, you know, kind of gave him a little iconic status. That's a hard handle for a 14-year-old who's really sharp and on his way to college at 16. Morehouse College, no less. A couple years prior, his mother passed away, or his grandmother really, but the woman who raised him, because his daddy was busy doing a lot of things. Okay. When his grandmother passed away, folk were really hard on him, expecting him to be on his way to college, even though he was only 14. He had started preaching at that age. He had considered suicide. Now, any psych majors around? Okay, all right, good. Or sociology? Because this is really kind of a cross psychology and sociology term, especially with suicide. Okay, there's this guy named Emil Durkheim. Now, he didn't discover it. He just happened to write about it, late 1800s. You know how the thing works in America. But this phenomena of people need to have a deep sense of meaning and connection with who they are. When that's lost, that's when suicidal thoughts come in. The sociological concept is that once you start moving people too quickly through anything, they lose that sense of meaning and purpose. I'll give you another example from the schooling piece, but I'm sure Martin was experiencing because he was part of that talented tenth, as it were. Okay? Part of a group of black families that had gone to college, had 2 or 3 generations already going through college, whereas most of black America hadn't yet had a lot of that experience, but he was part of that. Since the 1960s, girls' academic achievement has outpaced men. Okay. Boys, all the way down to elementary school, it just takes off. We've seen more women become teachers, less and less men go into the teaching field. I'm not saying these are bad things, I'm just talking about the phenomena as it is. With that, there comes attention, because by the time you get to college, funny thing is, there's been a few studies with black college students recently within the 2000s, and the men thought, man, I'm ready to go to college, and they were real confident, even though on average, most black men's grades were lower than black women's. Even when they finish college though, black men may get a job at a higher pay rate, but women are more likely to keep and sustain a job. You follow the tension? Yeah. So 40 years ago, so if your grandfather or if your father raised you, he's having this expectation that you're supposed to be the man of the house. Okay. But there's all this tension. How can we get this peace when stuff keeps shifting real fast? You got to be real clear about who you are. That's one major piece. Because if not, this society would have you crazy under their definition of manhood. That's what helped Dr. King. Now, whatever he had to do at Morehouse and other places where he was going to school, he had to wrestle through some things, but it seems that he turned out all right. He was really into this whole peace and nonviolence thing. Not right away, though. He had some folk around him with guns and other stuff, because he had to make sure that he was taking care of his family as well, especially once he had a family. Now, think about this. He went to school at 16?
Yeah.
And Montgomery bus boycott, anyone know how old he was then? If you're in Dr. Mandy's class, you would know this. This is a good plug for Africaness studies. You would know this right off. How old? 26. In just about 10 years, he goes from complete despair to really taking on the entire world, or at least the entire world view. Something happened where he had to come to real clear peace within himself about who he was and what he was about. That takes time, but it also takes some process where you get still within yourself. Anyone taking martial arts? Okay. All right. One of my favorite ones is Aikido, because we're really into the chakras. And one of the main exercises is you have to kind of hold right here by your navel chakra. And you have to be able to center all your energy here. This means you're comfortable and at peace with other people. If you can't, you get all thrown around, and you see people in class, they get flying the wrong way. They get knocked into other people. Okay? It doesn't matter how big or how small they are, if they're not comfortable and centered and at peace, they really can't do what they need to do. And really fight at a very high level. Because there's some folk who just, I don't know if you've seen some stuff after school, middle school type people. And everybody's all beat up, but then there's some folk who they can walk away and ain't nothing happened to them. And the other person is actually okay when you know what you're doing. I'm just talking about how you get to that place of peace. You have to be centered within yourself and comfortable with other people. Dr. King was that way, although he was definitely a fighter. Definitely. You follow that, man? All right. Protection. Brother Malcolm. Protection. Now, I know some of y'all may have seen the movie. One piece I did like about the movie, but even more about the autobiography and subsequent conversations about him, because I'm a psychologist, a particular school psychologist, I'm always interested in how youth are formed and how that later goes on in the manhood. Anybody know what happened to Malcolm's father? He got killed by the KKK? All right. Now, you know what his job was? Malcolm's father's job was? He was a pastor. In particular, a Garveyite pastor. And his mom, you know what she did for the Garveyite movement? His mom wrote the newsletters. Yeah. Now, his father passes away, leaves 4 to 6 children. Malcolm's maybe about 6 years old. But a deep impression is made on him that you've got to protect your family, doesn't matter what. You've got to stand up. I think at the beginning of the movie, he's telling him, hey, I'm a man. I don't care who you are, you in your white sheets. You can take these bullets for these sheets. You take yourself on. But I've got to get to that point where I'm willing to do whatever it takes to protect those who I love or who I'm responsible for. When I say responsible, sometimes people put responsible next to blame and they think they're synonymous. I like to think of responsible as simply able to respond. Are you able to respond? That's how you get to that place where you can protect what's important to you. Now, for those of y'all that don't have children, I'm going to share something that seems kind of strange, but when my daughter was born, and I have 2 of them, but when the first one was born, within 5 minutes of her being born, there was a nurse. She's a good-sized woman. She's about 6'2", so big. She had my little baby. I thought, I might have to kill this one. Where did it come from? But that's my baby. If you do anything strange, if I see anything wrong, and then I don't even know what's supposed to happen after a baby's born, immediately after at least. But I do know if that anything goes wrong for that little baby, you got to go. I don't care who you are, and that's deep within, but that comes from when things are right and in order, that you're going to do whatever you can to protect your children. You're going to do whatever you can to protect yourself. Now, your children really begin here. Good sex begins here. I don't know if anyone followed that. Especially for most men, because it's pretty much a body sensation. But if you're making babies, we started this talking about projecting yourself forward. Good protection, in regards to that, begins here. And what your expectations are. Because sometimes folk got a lot of expectations about relationships. A lot of expectations. And they keep working them out and working them out. They still keep clashing into each other. Begins here. That protection piece comes down to how do I protect my mind from some of the junk that's coming at it? How do I get my will? Dr. Naim Akbar has a really good book called The Community of Self. It's only about that big, but it's heavy. Because he talks about how do you get your will to the point where you're able to do what you need to do. That's about protecting yourself, protecting your mind. And that if that mind is strong, you know you're going to be strong as a person, as a man. Protection. Brother Malcolm, going back to him. for those of y'all that aren't familiar with the story, I'm just going to hit on a few key points. In 8th grade, he's the president of his class. He's doing really well, but he stops reading because, and you know, 12-year-olds, folks should be out protecting them. But he's in the foster care system, and one of his teachers tells him, you can't be a lawyer. Why? Because you're a nigga. There's no protection there. That really injured his mind for a while. So he goes on and becomes Detroit Red. Goes out and commits a few crimes and other things. Still searching for this sense of manhood. He's wearing wild zoot suits. He's smoking reefer. I'm just going from the book. He's hanging out in wild places, jumping from job to job. He's not quite centered. Unfortunately, gets involved with the injustice system, as Dr. Michael Connor likes to call it, and they lock him up. And in that process, though, someone helps him to free his mind. Once he's able to free and protect his mind, he's able to defend himself. He gets involved in debate and other things. He's clear about who he is and where he comes from. And he emerges from that situation strong. No matter what came at him after that, it's his mind, very strong. Willing to protect his 4 little girls. I got 2 little girls, so every time I think of Malcolm, man, I got a good standard to keep up with. He's protecting his 4 little girls and his wife, similar to how his father had to do. Okay, that protection is extremely important, but it starts here. It starts here. Always have a plan, always have a strategy. One last piece before we move on to the next one, that protection piece. When I talk to young men especially, a lot of them have option A and B cold, but they don't have option C. Option C is a redundancy. Any military operation, you got option A, B, C, and D, and you keep going. I don't know if y'all like to look at YouTube or any of that, check out Geronimo Pratt. Any interview with Geronimo Pratt, this is a man who plans everything he says. And he already planned it maybe 20 years before. Unfortunately, he had 27 years to be locked up and confined, but even before that, he planned. The brother on my shirt here, Fred Hampton, everything he said was planned and targeted for psychological warfare, but also actual warfare to free the minds of everybody. That was his ultimate aim. He was willing to sacrifice for that. He's still with us. Now, I'll talk about Fred in a little bit. Provisions. You got to provide something. Okay. Now, if you in college and you are lacking in cash, I think all I got is receipts because I have children. You have to have some level of potential that you can take care and provide something. Even if you have no cash, you got to bring something. You got to bring something to better those around you. Because if you show up and you sucking the life out of the room, or you're not bringing anything that shows any potential, it's painful. Now, when I first became aware of this, as I worked as a school psychologist in the high schools, young men would come to me and they'd be really, really frustrated. Really frustrated because their parents were all over them. And I said, son, I want you to watch your parents. I'm going to say some things. I'm not even going to look at your parents. I'm going to look at you. But I want you to watch your parents. I'm going to say a couple of things. Your parents have been on a long journey. At some point, they used to enjoy their life. They love you, but you came along and they're looking forward to something. It's been they've been on this train and they're looking at the light at the end of the tunnel and they just want to know that you will finish this high school experience, leave, and not come back. And be able to take care of yourself. That's the main issue. And I said, keep watching your parents' face, and the parents are just relieved, they're satisfied. Because this is what they know. Women are looking for that as well in men. Some level of potential. Show me that you have just some light. I don't know if anyone's ever heard George Clinton. There's a song And at the end of the song, it says, everybody's got a little light under the sun. It was talking about all these different kinds of people who are coming to the dance, and some people can't quite dance well, but we're just hoping that you got a little potential. You got to come with something. A poem, a deep thought, some plans for the future. Clear plans, not dreams that you've been holding or toting around, but I'm talking a clear plan and access to that plan. How are you going to make it happen? Now, I don't even need to ask for no more, because I think the sisters have seen this. And if you're a young brother who's wondering, oh, you know, I got good dreams. You know, I heard, what's his name, Otis Redding, he had a song, I Got Dreams to Remember. Okay? That's beautiful. But at some point, you got to wake up. And you got to go out and take care of providing things, even the basics. My father used to say something to me all the time. I love my dad, Art Camp. He'd say, you know, if we have to eat beans and rice, we'll do it. For you to be able to go to college, or for you to be able to even have a corsage to take this girl to this banquet, we'll do it. Part of it is not because I'm so thrilled about you going and you think you're dating somebody, because you ain't. This is my money. But because I want you on the path towards manhood, and I want that to be clear for you. So whatever needs to happen, I'm willing to sacrifice for that. So providing means that you've sacrificed something. So there are things that you can engage in to demonstrate that you're willing to sacrifice. Some of that comes with dissing yourself with the plan, what I call discipline. So if everyone say, hey man, it's popping off at the party this weekend, we're going to the Lush Lounge or wherever else we're going, you got to hold on. You got to hold on and say, all right, I will be there. However, I got 2 or 3 hours of studying I need to do. Because if I don't get this studying done, I lose my scholarship. Stuff happens. You follow me? Because I've seen some folk, and I didn't even say I've seen some folk. My freshman year, I had to learn this process. I said, man, these folk have a party every night. There's no particular school night. You just got to figure out when and how to study, but you got to have a plan. You got to dish yourself a little bit with the plan. That's how you get to the point where you're providing those provisions. All right. This last one is power. And Frederick Douglass. I don't know if everybody's familiar with Frederick Douglass' story, but what makes Frederick Douglass unique is a couple of things. Similar to Bob Marley. If anybody knows, Bob Marley's parents, father was white, mother was black. Frederick Douglass' situation, his mother's was raped, unfortunately, by the slave master, so he becomes a slave. But Frederick had something unique that sometimes a lot of even boys, and I talked about boyhood earlier, a lot of boys don't have an opportunity to have. He lived with his grandmother for the first 8 years of his life. That kind of messed him up because she loved him. She just simply loved him. And no one was going to take that power from him. Talking about power. It gave him a real keen sense of what right living was and love. So when he saw injustice from his slave master or from other folk who had bought into what the slave master was telling him, he just wouldn't tolerate it. Now, interestingly enough, because his daddy was a slave master, he was about the same size. And he came to a point when he was a little older than a teenager where he said, you ain't gonna hit me no more. He fought at least twice. Second time, he left. Now, the first time he said, all right, I got beat down pretty good, but I'm getting out of here because my body, my soul just cannot tolerate injustice. I can't leave it in there. Because that becomes painful after a while. If you see bad things happening or things that aren't right and you just sit back, or you become disempowered. You lose your sense of purpose. And that didn't happen to Frederick. He said, all right. So all those other pieces I was talking about before, he kind of put into play. He said, all right, I'm just going to sit here and think for a little while. He was getting back some of his peace. And he started watching what was going on the plantation. He found something very interesting at Christmas. The slave master would give all the black folk something to drink to make sure that they were drunk while they went to go celebrate Christmas. And if everybody was drinking and partying real hard during Christmas, then they wouldn't be thinking about running away. Well, he said, all right, next Christmas, I'm going to act like I'm drunk. I'm going to act like I'm stone cold drunk, and then about 4 or 5 of us, we got a plan. And they started planning from Christmas, and by April, they was gone. Gone. About February, around Frederick's birthday, Cole knocked out a slave master. Because he was acting up, and they sent him to another plantation. He said, you know, I ain't having this no more. Knocked him clean out. Okay, I don't know if you've ever seen a picture of Frederick Douglass, whether he was young or he was older. It's just look in his eyes like, man, what you talking about? I'm out of here. Okay, that sense of power. Now, I talk about all these different stories because each one of them are models of human excellence that Dr. Naim Akbar would talk about in one of his books called Visions of Black Manhood. It's another one of these books, about that big but very deep. And these models, and Dr. Karinga would talk quite a bit about these different models of human excellence. That's the first time I heard that term. That can help empower us. So when we wonder who we are and what we're about, especially when we're sitting in the classroom or we're on some type of job where we're wondering exactly who we are, we can recall those. Okay, I talked about spirit earlier. And I'm not talking about some flying around thing. I'm talking about something very real, because when I say that name or when you look at those pictures, it come right out at you. Hits you right here, or wherever it needs to hit you. You know, I was talking about those chakras before. Some of it is in the intellect, some of it's in our connection with other people, some of it's in our heart and our connections. And as we grow, our heart remembers. If you allow me to be a psychologist for a little bit, I got one of these wild phones, this Android. For those that have been on Facebook with me know it's been a challenge, because you know, you tap the thing and then you could lose the whole thing, then it comes back. But it remembers so many different things. Our heart is similar. Our heart regulates the rest of our body's functions. So if we get into a bad situation, we can feel it. I have been given this gift. Okay, at first I thought it was a real curse, but it's a gift. I could smell injustice. I could smell discrimination and racism. I can get it over the phone nowadays. I can hear it in people's voice. Okay. Each one of us, if you are a man, you got to be aware of what your gift is. This is one I got. I tried to push it away because in Western society's definition of manhood, I would be crazy to accept that I have this gift to feel discrimination. Okay. And I had to kind of wrestle with it a little bit, do my little psychology thing to go ahead and say, all right, this has to do with some neurological phenomena that is having to do with the regulation of the heart and the regulation of the brain, and those two coming together to be able to make this thing happen. No, it's just spirits, ancestors are with me telling me they wrong. You need to just speak up about it, because sometimes we just leave it there. It also allows me to be able to say, that's right, that's beautiful black person. Do it. Do your thing, and have that connection. Have any of y'all had that connection yet up here? Okay. Sometimes we walk by each other and we miss each other. Because all that stuff gets in the way of us being able to get that sense of who we are and that connection. Peace, Martin Luther King. Protection, Brother Malcolm. Provisions. I want to talk with y'all a little bit more, but Booker T. Washington, if y'all familiar with Booker T. Washington, I mean, he started a whole school. He said, all this stuff these folk are giving us is so ridiculous, I got to go start my own school. Along with that, I like to still make those connections to the sisters. You got Mary McLeod Bethune. Okay, started her own school as well. Power, Frederick Douglass. Now, I wanted to get a sense of some of your questions because I got to be real. When I was in college, I thought my father, I love him to death, but I thought he was just not, he was not right. When I hit about 27, and after I had my first child, I realized this man was a genius. Genius. But I didn't even know some of the questions to ask. So if y'all don't have any, I'll start asking some questions. But I wanted to hear some of your questions and some of your thoughts about manhood. Good to see you, brother.
Good to see you, too. Do you believe that it is possible to be a man without a father?
I hope everyone heard that question. Do you believe it's possible to be a man without a father? I'm just going to ponder that. Can a man be a man without a father? Can a person be a person without a father or a mother? Again, I'm coming from spirit, so if you have the physical situation where your father's gone, we mentioned Brother Malcolm, whose father was killed, and he was raised by his mom. His father was always with him, as you can see how he lived his life. Now, how you engage your father, that's the main issue. So other things that I really believe we lost is this understanding of, you're a man. And someone blessing you with that. Okay. Whether you read the Bible or the Quran or any ancient text, there's someone, the teachings of Pa-Hotep, and there's someone saying, son, this is right. I see you, you're a man. That's important. It's extremely important. So, below, I know my dad used to always tell me, I'm proud of you, son. Even if I'm getting C's and D's. But one of the things he knew, his father wasn't around. And he said, all I wanted for my dad was to be able to tell me that he was proud of me. So I would envision that day. Like I said, it begins in the mind. How you raise your son begins in the mind. Sometimes what I tell young folk is that they have to start envisioning their son as well. Because it's difficult for them to get to that spirit sense because they're so mad. Because our visions of Father, God, get all intertwined because we get into all this, especially that, and I want folk to be able to follow on with me, but especially that white Jesus picture, so if you can't keep up after this one, I understand. But that white Jesus picture and who God is and that Father piece, it can mess up your brain. It really has done a number on a lot of folk in regards to that connection. Yeah. But you have to be clear about who the folk in your life are. So if you see a brother struggling with that piece about, am I a man? There's different ways that folk go out to seek validation. Sometimes they do it a little too much. And I'm going to be real, I'm going to speak about some of these fraternities or whatever. Some of it is because it's late. We do funny things in America. We got teenagers, and then they got all the hormones and everything ready to engage in the physical act of being men and women, but we tell them, postpone that. Hold that up. And then we still don't give them real clear markers, especially black men, because as I said before, this society don't define us right. If you crazy, then you're okay. And we'll find something for you. If you think against, and what I mean by crazy is thinking against your own best interests, thinking against your family's own best interests, then we'll define you as okay. So how do you get that definition? You start connecting with other black men down here, but it really has to come from in here. You got to pray and wrestle with who you think your daddy is and get that clear definition. Now, that can come from religion, that can come from all different places, but yes, many mamas have raised high-quality men. Malcolm's mom. Okay. It can happen. Another question? Yes.
Does the same apply to someone that was adopted by a black man?
Yeah. Same apply to someone who's adopted by a black man? Yes. And in that sense, you know, sometimes I have to help folk with the idea that if we use these definitions that were given to us by people who oppressed us, okay, I'm talking about all over the world. Race is a definition that's given to people who have oppressed us. Skin color, making class and structures and denying people opportunities based on skin color, that's all up here. However, being black, and what I'm really talking about in this sense is connecting to that humanity, because as I was talking earlier, there's a piece of humanity that was taken away, or at least tried to be taken away from black folk. But having that connection, oh yeah, it can happen. It can happen. Still, we all have to wrestle with what our identity is and how that piece is out. Because in America, it's really tries to force you into one identity, especially if you go to college. Everybody wants this nice, neat resolution to that piece. I hope I'm answering part of your question, or at least some of it. But that's an interesting story, but I've seen it play out again and again. My father went to a foster home and was raised with several different children. And this is in the 50s and 60s, during the time of segregation. So, and his family lived in Indiana, came all the way out to California. But that's, I call this Afro-humanity. What the world is really lacking when they deny certain aspects of spirit. I say it makes you even more of a whole person. And I'm talking about the particular times. Again, folk get all locked into the skin color and the race and all. I'm talking about the times that if a person asserts themselves as a black person and is clear about who they are and comfortable in that identity, things can round it out. But if not, you're still going to run into problems. Anyone else? Yes.
You mentioned Frederick Douglass.
Yes.
And he was enslaved, raised by his mother.
Right, his grandmother.
His grandmother.
His mother was treated very badly by him.
So if you don't have your biological father,
Right.
he had to have had positive role models to emulate who he was.
Right.
Right. Oh, aside from his mother.
Right. Right.
So you don't need your biological parents.
No.
It's the substitutes are other role models that
Right.
are in your life.
Right.
Influence you far greater than your biological parents.
You know, one other thing that a lot of studies have found as well for Latino and black youth, that there's usually somebody who's outside of their parents, because their parents are catching a lot of hell. And they just need someone who can just laugh with them. Either an aunt or an uncle, godparent, who can just kind of diffuse the situation. I didn't know my dad had any parts of cool until I met his brothers. My Uncle Roland came down. Uncle Roland, now I'm gonna be real, Uncle Roland had been locked away for a little time. I didn't know. But he's wearing 1975 clothes and it's 85. And he had on some good platforms and the hat to the side. He looked just like my dad, but he didn't talk like my dad. And he had all kinds of stories about him. And I only got to see him about once a year, but every time I saw him, I had a real just release. I can be cool too. My other uncle, he taught me how to play basketball. He was about 6'4", went to University of Washington, Uncle Everett. But right before I went to high school, he stayed with us for a whole summer. And it was just a beautiful blessing because I was at odds with my pops. And my dad's only about this tall, but I felt he was like this tall. But my uncle just kind of helped smooth that transition. smart parents or smart young people as well, as they start looking for it, they'll seek out those different people. But if we are also being men, and I'm talking now, especially your young men in the audience, if you're being a man, you're not really fully a man unless you're mentoring another man. So Chancellor Williams, in The Destruction of Black Civilization. Anyone read this book or seen this book? Okay, if you're at a bookstore, especially a black bookstore, a little white book, red and black stripes on the side, you've got to pick up this book. Okay, it may seem very dense at first, but it will just speak right to you. They talk about in Timbuktu, where if you even 40 years old, you still got somebody who's teaching you all the way to your 80. So that model I've used in different schools and different young men's programs as far as mentoring, where I'd have some high school students, you're mentoring middle school students, and then my college students would come and mentor the high school students, and the college students would be mentored by some grown men who had similar professions that the high school or the college students were interested in. And we go all the way through. You got to have those kind of connections. Another piece about Native Americans and Africans believe this concept of you're not fully human unless you can count back 7 generations. So you have to have some of that connection. If not, you're really missing a piece of who you are. And so this goes back to some of the family piece. That's why I called out some of my own family. I really want to remember that. And I've given different talks, and I've actually met some of my family members just even in the talks. That's, you know, spirit working as well, but you got to be able to call that out and be able to make those connections. So even if you're alone, or even if all you got is, and I went to Palomar Community College, mostly white college. I grew up in Escondido, California. One of only 4 black students to graduate in the class of 44. So I went to Palomar, and they had this bookshelf, the black bookshelf, 2 of them. I read everything up in there. Those became my mentors, my surrogates. And up to that point, I hadn't gotten A's in anything. They helped me get the A's. Sometimes I take a B because I'm too busy reading this book. I'm sorry, I ain't turning in that paper. Because you want me to say something that ain't true. Especially in history class. So you got to have those surrogates, those connections, but you can get them in the books. One last piece about those surrogates, because I really like this connection or metaphor Dr. Nine McGuire uses. He talks about the butterfly, and I kind of equated or connected with reading a book. Well, you know, the butterfly, prior to that, is a worm. Really needs help to kind of get along. But if you read the right books, you'll come out stronger, especially if you cocoon yourself in that library. I'm always giving a plug for the actual library with the actual books. I know they kind of go on the way and you got them on the iPad or whatever you got. But in some of the classics, you know, you can get off Google Books, whatever you need to, but let that mentor you and fill you. So going back to some of your comments, there's somebody in the world who either got a Facebook page or who has written some good literature who could speak to that, who could speak to your spirit. One really is Bob Marley. Bob Marley had a very interesting experience, and he was able to connect all around the world. And I think that was, just my opinion, ordained by God for him to go ahead and be able to do that and have that unique experience. Because out of that unique experience growing up, he had a very beautiful outpouring throughout the world that still has lasted. That's the other piece I really wanted to leave with y'all, that if you are human, you're going to last beyond just this physical life. Manhood is beyond just this physical frame. Part of that is being able to have that strong mind. Another question? Yes?
I like how you're talking about the identity, and you mentioned Black Jesus.
Oh, yeah.
And I think, you know, historically, not only is a white Jesus inaccurate and symbolically inappropriate,
Right.
but so would you say that one has to have an identity anchored in something in order to have the protection, to have a plan, to have power?
I would. I just think part of it is, too, is our particular time and space orientation that we got to have something that anchors us. whether it's Mayat, when I mentioned Geronimo Pratt, that really anchored him all the way through. Like I saw an interview recently that I was looking at on YouTube with Tavis Smiley. You just forgave him? You have no animosity? He said, I should have animosity against my enemy. I've won. I've won as soon as my mind is free. So why should I worry about that? But wrestling with my eye allowed me to be able to deal with that. There's got to be something. Dr. Amos Wilson, he talked about the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and what he really did for black people. He said he was just an amazing psychologist. He told you, the white man is the devil. And in the 1940s, 1950s, there's evidence all around, but nobody's saying it. And folk had been put on this idea of a particular type of Jesus that you had to bow down to, pay all your taxes to. And then on top of that, he's telling you, you can't come over here and come over there, and then you created from Ham and all these other drama that's put on it. Sometimes you gotta have something to completely counter that, or at least understand that tradition. Now, everybody wrestles with belief in all religious systems. I think even Mother Teresa, she was still wondering, do I really got it? Before she passed. But it's not so much that you believe all of it, but it's that you get an understanding of it and wrestle with it. If you're familiar with the Christian tradition, you got Job, who's looking at God. Job gets stripped of everything. Job's like, hey, God, like 2 or 3 chapters. I don't know what you're doing, but you ain't doing nothing right. And he wrestles with it. That's, me at least, I like that piece of the Bible because that's more authentic than trying to come up with, well, in order for you to have this particular experience, you've got to do this, this, and this, and this. It's worth it to understand how people, sometimes, and a psychologist, I'm always curious as to how people got to this point where they're doing some strange thing. Kissing bread and drinking wine and thinking that's just not rational, but folk are still engaged in that. Some of that you have forms and functions. I like martial arts, I like surfing, and I still like going to church because it goes back thousands of years, and that's part of that human family, and I like to be engaged in the conversation. I think folk miss out on the conversation if they're at least not knowledgeable of that information and completely push it to the side. So whether to be knowledgeable and wrestle with it. What that does for you, that's a completely different thing. I even think that it's still within. You got to find that within. You got to find that piece. Some people say that God's within. You got to find that. You got to find some of that. It's worth it wrestle with. And being people of spirit, and however that means. Because I mentioned it in different frames. One is simply the actual physical act of being able to project yourself forward or making those connections to your ancestors. Because if you lose who those folk are, you really lose a large part of yourself. So that's one level of working with spirit. So there's all different ways to engage it, but I say engage it. And do so always questioning. Because there are always people who act like they're spiritual, but they're willing to take your money, touch the TV. I got a handkerchief for you, and we'll sell it with my essence, and we'll sell it. Some people, they worship. I'm just keeping it real. Some people worship Elvis. Some people worship Tupac. Some people worship different things a little too much and don't think critically about what's happening around them, and they lose that sense of peace. If something pushes you out of that sense of peace, maybe it's time to leave that alone. I've left church alone for several years, and I came back to it when I was more centered, because they was pushing me all over. I said, man, these people is crazy. No, I'm crazy for staying here when they lost it. I saw a hand over here, and maybe another one over here. Yeah.
What are some books you recommend?
Now, I was throwing them out there, but I'll list a few. But go ahead.
Yeah, about this man.
Visions for Black Manhood, or Visions for Black Men, I think.
Visions for Black Men.
Visions for Black Men.
Okay.
Yeah, Visions for Black Men, Dr. Naim Akbar. For every black college student, the miseducation of the Negro. every black college student must read that before you matriculate through college at some point, because I know you got a lot of reading you're doing, and I don't want you to feel more stressed, like I ain't black enough because I ain't read the book. No, no. At some point before you matriculate through. There's some really good chapters, though, that talk about, and he's really telling his own experience of going to college, but a lot of it still applies today. And I think his book was 1933, so a lot of it still applies today, interestingly enough. The teachings of Pahotep, and that was edited by Dr. Asa Hilliard. I can't remember, do you remember the other two folk who were with him? No. But if you look under Dr. Asa Hilliard, that one I know for sure is that Shades of Africa. Everybody familiar with Shades of Africa? You got to have a safe space where you can go and find your own books. If you don't go to Shades of Africa, you got to go to Esalen. If not, you got to find a safe internet space, and it ain't always Amazon, because they like to track what you buying.
Get rid of stuff.
So look out there. Another one, Dr. Mandy. The full title?
Which one?
Dissertation.
The first one?
Yeah.
The I Am model of African male identity development.
I Am model of African male identity development. I've read it all on the plane, then I read it again, I'm still wrestling with that one. It's a good one. And I'm saying this right in front of Dr. Mandy, but touch me. Yes.
Are there any books in particular that black women can read in order to understand black men? Or try to better
That was my next. Seriously.
Yes. No,
That was my question next.
Hey, don't play around with that.
Can I understand a little bit?
Don't play around. I'm smiling because I'm trying to remember one, but Sherazad Ali wrote a book a few years ago. But there's, I can't even remember the one, but it's kind of a complimentary book set, and they're at Esalen bookstore. I cannot remember the name of the book, but one of them is somewhere along the lines of how to treat and love a black woman, and also how to treat and love a black man. They're parallel titles. I can't remember the exact one, but they're parallel titles.
what's her name?
They're at Esalen bookstore. And I can't remember the author's name, but they're at Esalen bookstore. And that book came out in 2010. And they've come recently to Esalen. So if you look for Esalen, ESOWON, it's in Leimert Park. Go there and you'll be able to pick up that book. And if y'all hit me up on Facebook at the, what is this, the ASU's Facebook page, you can find me there. I'm gonna post that. I'll post that book for you. Because I bought one for a friend of mine. He just got married, so I bought the set for both of them.
Oh, that's cute.
Ms. Collins, did you have a question on it?
I answered it when you were talking. Well, I'll still share it because I think it's important to share.
I was talking about you earlier, so
You told me.
so this all works out.
But I was just, because I know you share my thesis, but I'm interviewing a lot of black men. I'm interviewing older men and younger men. And I'm just trying to understand how we can actually get them to see who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a matter of organizing and mobilizing, think tanks. I know we hear Dr. Phil Valentine talk about that all the time, getting together and organizing and not being so quick to do something, to really just talk about the problem like we're doing now. So I think just educating ourselves, reading, and then thinking of ways to organize locally and mobilize locally first. So within the campus, which we try to do through NAACP and through ASU, doing events like this, and then how we expand. Because we'll talk about this, and then what's gonna happen next month. We're gonna do another event, and then next year, and you know, so it's like, where do we really go from here?
I think some of it is being able to be comfortable with that moment, because sometimes we really like to fuss at ourselves or at each other. Sometimes you gotta, I was talking earlier about peace. You gotta have some level of peace with the process, because if you go to a situation and you still leave kind of frustrated, especially at black folk. Kwame Ture, aka Stokely Carmichael, used to talk about having an undying love for black people. The only way to get that is really start spending some time with black folk. Sometimes folk kind of push away at that opportunity to be able to do that. It's really a privilege to be able to do this. I'm deeply honored to be able to do this, because how many other places can you go in Southern California and do this? A lot of the other places people are, it's one way if you do go to those experiences, but to have that dialogue with folk. Another piece, and I know you're interviewing folk and you know, you're doing a whole human development piece, is psychology really should be about the illumination of the soul. So I look for those opportunities to simply be able to highlight. So I'm at my best as a psychologist or as a human healing person, or just connecting with folk, is if I step away and highlight what's right. We spend a lot of time with what's wrong, but taking time to highlight what's right. I think the other pieces you were talking about, you mentioned Phil Valentine and educating. Fred Hampton, watching quite a few of his videos this week. He was just really on my mind this week, so I pulled out my Fred Hampton shirt. Had to get that energy. He was really big on educating folk, making sure that people were educated. And he was a very young father. I mean, he was gone from us at 21 years of age. I see he was born in 1948. He was my mama's age. But that really, man, he could still be right here vital with us. But he said education was one of the main keys. And so supporting people in their efforts and progress, and also acknowledging, because sometimes we get into all these degrees and mess. It's all kind of, y'all are teaching me right now. So you have to be willing to be able to learn and grow. And that takes some process, but really get to that point where you can highlight what's right with black people. Because there's so much in the world that's what's wrong with black folk. That catches on. Highlighting what's right and what's beautiful with black people, that catches on. And not that I hate for anybody else, but man, I love black people. And that catches on, that grows. So if you have those opportunities, you connect in that love. Any other questions? All right, then I got one more story. It's an old one, but I hope we can kind of piece together a lot of these different things that we've talked about. There was this farm. My daddy's a farmer, so he grew up a farmer. Ironic things, he retired, and next door, I feel bad for him, because he thought he was getting away, but he bought this new house since he retired, and there's a whole chicken farm next door. So he thought he retired and could sleep in until 10 o'clock, but these chickens are up. Well, I get thinking about this chicken farm, and the next door neighbor, one day they had this egg. It's a little bigger than the average egg, and the neighbor, he's not too bright. He really don't know what he has. You're talking about, you know, the man before. He really don't know what he has. But he sets it in with the other chickens. And eventually it hatches. But it don't look like the other chickens. It's kind of ugly and goofy. Kind of trips over itself. These chickens, you know, they got a thing. But this one is kind of, like, hey, big boy, why you eating up all the feed? Y'all goofy and clumsy. You don't know what's going on. Well, there's some smarter folk that came by and they saw this funky looking chicken. And they said, whoa, you know what you got there? Yeah, it's a big chicken. That's what the farmer said. He wasn't too sharp. It reminded me of the time I went to this public school, middle school, and I saw these young brothers. And now, I don't want to get too much into fagging jeans and all, but I don't know if you've seen this phenomenon where they got like 2 or 3 pairs of underwear on, and then you can see the whole thing. Yeah, yeah. I've even had to pull over my car and be like, "Hey, I got people back here. I got daughters back here. I'm going to school. You need to pull your pants up." I'm sorry, sir. And that's the good ones. But they may not be aware of exactly what's going on. I'm sorry, I'm getting too much in my little story. Crazy chicken.
Chicken.
Right. So he's walking around, he's packing, his beak is all messed up because it's a little bigger than the average. You know, his beak is all messed up. And the smart guy, he comes back again, he's like, "Look, farmer, I told you. We have a special program. It's called Gear It Up or something, but we're gonna help this funky looking chicken be able to fly because we think it might be something else. We don't think that could be possibly an eagle or anything. We just think it might be something else. And it might be able to help other chickens be able to just be satisfied with chicken feed. So we're gonna take it up the mountain." And they took it up the mountain, and the chicken was too goofy and heavy, and he fell down halfway down the mountain, and he just walked back and ate the chicken feed and was satisfied. This wild thing reminds me of some high school students I met. And they hadn't heard in middle school about any A through G requirements. They hadn't read any Black history. No one had really told them about who they were. Or no one had really got to that point where it had illuminated their soul. And these brothers were just satisfied. Nothing against community college, because I love community college, I had a good time. But they could have even considered going to a Black college or going to a CSU or something, but they were just satisfied with, "Yo, man, I got what I got. You know, I'm gonna work over here at the whatever store and do what I can do. I'm trying to get my hustle on. You know, I'm making t-shirts, I'm selling stuff out the back of the car, and ain't nothing wrong with that when you a chicken. Nothing wrong with that. And there's, I'm sorry, did I get ahead? Let me get back to this crazy chicken. Yeah. So he's packing away, he's really messing up his beak, he's bumping into all the other chickens, he's making everything. You know, some of the other chickens, they got together and they said, "You know what? You're too big and clumsy, we need to lock you up. You can't hang out with us. We got problems with you." Hey, I mean, it's great when you come out to play basketball with us. It's great when you come out to maybe rap. We don't want you singing because you sang the chicken national anthem and you know, you had beats and rhymes to it. We would just like for you to stay away. I don't know if anyone's seen this. Something like that.
Yes.
Okay, especially like juniors in high school. You know, interesting thing, because it reminds me of like the end of high school. You know, you start off with the freshmen, there's 1,000 of them. Then you go to a high school graduation, and there's like 400. Yeah. And you wonder where all them folk went? Well, anyway, I knew where this funky chicken was. Now, he could have stayed there, but fortunately for this funky chicken, he started thinking, got his plan together. He started thinking, he's like, man, there's gotta be something better than this. And he starts looking up for the first time because he's been satisfied with eating just the chicken feed. You know, chickens, you just gotta throw the food at them. And they go and they just satisfied with whatever anybody gives them. Don't think too deep. They got a little. I used to work at a poultry farm. And they used to put, and this was the cleaner poultry farm. They even got an award for being clean. But they put them in 3 in a box about this big, and they peck each other to death. I don't know if anybody ever heard anything like that. Maybe like crabs in a barrel, or, you know, but they kind of keep each other down, and they want to be the best at producing eggs, so when the person comes by, they might get a little bit more feed. But but they would rather kill each other for a little bit more feet. I don't know if anybody's ever heard anything like that. Wow. Wow. Well, this big old chicken, and no one wanted to really be in the cage with him because they figured he'd make it out. Because he seemed to be stronger, and he got to thinking, and he was a little smarter than the other chickens. And he was not satisfied, and then one day, he sees way up in the sky, some circling. What do you think it was? The helicopter had already scoped him out. That's why he was locked up. You know, I went to go visit Long Beach PD. They had that helicopter. You know that helicopter circulates 12 hours a day? They would like a bigger budget to keep helicopters circulating so they could watch all over. You thought Google Earth was bad. Just an aside, just an aside. Anyone have an idea what he saw up there? Eagle?
Eagle, bird, something.
An eagle. He saw an eagle. And his wings was huge. They had big, goofy feet like him. Okay. See, he really hadn't known his daddy. And he didn't know that his dad had big, goofy feet like that. Or that his dad's wingspan was pretty wide. Now, he'd been just locked up, so he was kind of funky underneath there. One day they let him out to kind of walk around the yard by himself, and he stretched it out. Stretched out another one. Oh, man, that felt kind of good. He flapped it, and all that chicken feed just spread away. He's like, man, I can't even eat no more because the food keeps, I got to get my own food. Now, the farmer, he's like, you know, I can't do anything else with you because the chickens don't want you around. And you done flapped away all the food. So he started heading up the way. Now those eagles, they saw him because eagles, they know other eagles. And guess what? He was an eagle. He didn't know it yet, though. There's been some folk who've been satisfied. It just reminds me of some folk who's been satisfied who, with being either boys, kind of like chicken type of men, not quite men. My daddy used to call them junior flips. Because they should have flipped over into being a man, but they just stuck at a junior. I don't know if you've ever seen anything like this. It should be grown men, but they still just satisfied with people giving them stuff. Satisfied with basics. So anyways, he starts wandering away, and he heads back up that hill. And the other eagle's like, hey, come on up here with us. It's beautiful up here. And then we get our own food. Fish, man, I think my cousin caught a cow one time. We're serious about getting our own stuff. And they headed up there. Now, the first time he jumped off because he was a little scared. Wasn't even sure that he was really eagle. He just thought maybe I could fly. Almost messed up his wing. Second time, they said, all right, hop on my back. I got you. But you're going to have to just, all you got to do is just stick, you got to trust something. You got to trust something. I'm going to let you go. Let him down. Caught up a little bit. And he's thinking, oh, man, I'm a chicken. I'm a chicken. No, I better be an eagle. So I'm about to die if I don't be an eagle. I'm about to die up here if I don't be an eagle. Dr. Asa Hood talked about this concept, to be black or not to be. Sometimes folks will have us be what we ain't. We might as well be gone. I mentioned before about the whole suicidal ideation. If I ain't who I really am, I'm a struggle. Frantz Fanon, Algerian psychiatrist, who actually fought in the war with France, you know, he asked deep questions, and Dr. Kringer really crystallizing, who am I? Am I really who I say that I am? And am I all that I should be? Eagle time. He was up there. So, if you've heard this story, good, but I'm hoping you're getting this. You can't soar like an eagle if you still think you a chicken. Now, he could have gone up there even by himself if he was fully aware of who he was and what he was about. Some men aren't clear on who they are and what they're about. And you don't need the physical piece, but you do need the spiritual piece, because even if your physical father's there, sometimes that's messed up. Because your physical father's wrestling with his own problems. My daddy and I, we wrestled. 12 o'clock at night, got to have some ice cream. I'm just saying. But there's other pieces where he says, son, I got a beautiful vision for you, and you got to catch a beautiful vision for yourself. I can't make you happy. I don't know. I think that's about as high as we can go. You know, eagle. Unless we catch an eagle on a spaceship or something. It could happen. All right. Thank you.